back to Barefoot Gardening. Today on the channel, we're going to be building this. This is a compact but expandable NFT system that will help you grow vegetables, leafy greens, and herbs hydroponically. So let's take a look at what it looks like now, and I'll show you the build process, and we'll go over the costs and an item list if you want to put one of these in your backyard. So the system is set up with 4 rails that all collect on a downspout at the end. That downspout then drains into a reservoir at the bottom. That's a 27-gallon water container from your big box stores. That one came from Walmart. It's powered with a cable that runs underground to my house through that box right there. So you can see I've got a little bit of an ant problem that I'll have to sort at some point. The system and the rails are 3/4 inch EMT conduit, and it's built with some connectors from Amazon. I've got some bump stops here that I ended up putting on but not needing since the rails aren't going that far over. I've got 4 rails on this right now, but it could easily be turned into something that has 8 or 10. You see I've got lots of space for the veggies to grow and spread out. The holes are drilled 6 inches apart on center, and it is fed with a pump in the reservoir that goes through 1/2-inch pipe with some shutoff valves and a drain out pipe that I've put in. The shutoff valves open up to 1/4 inch tubing that feeds the reservoir or feeds the channels. You can see the water flows through and goes mostly through the middle, but also sometimes along the sides. But the channel is small enough that I shouldn't have too much difficulty with that. May have to worry a little bit on some leveling some of these pipes out. So these are 5-inch runs. The system could easily be turned into 10-foot runs with as far back as I can go. And you could add several more pipes to the channels if you wanted to. So what are you going to need to build a system like this? General parts list is you're going to need 3/4 inch EMT. Depending on the size of system that you use, you're going to need probably about 3 or 4 pieces or more if you want to build a bigger system. I used 3 and I didn't have a whole lot left over. So if you're building any bigger than mine, you probably need 3 10-foot sections of 3/4 inch EMT pipe. That's about $15 each. You need the tubing that you're going to use for your NFT channels. In this case, it's 2x3 downspouts. I've got 4 that I've cut in half. So they're about $15 for a 10-foot section, so 2 5-foots each. That gets me about $30 worth of downspouts for the channels, plus something to catch them in. So I'm using 3x4 downspout because I had some left over from another build. So you've got that. To catch it, you've got a downspout cover. It's about $8-10, or a downspout adapter. It's about $8 or $10. Your reservoir is probably going to be 20 or 25, depending on the size that you get. So figure up about $10 for tubing, 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, or you could just go 1/2 inch. There's a lot of different options you could do, however you want to. You need some connections, some elbows, some fittings. You need the connectors to put the EMT together. I only used 4, and they come in a pack of 10. They're like $25. So what's that? $2.50 each, so $10 worth of connections to make the EMT form, and a few other little tools. Some screws and nuts and bolts and that kind of stuff here and there. You need a pump for your reservoir. I'm using a VivoSun 800-gallon per hour 24-watt pump. So fairly cheap. They're only $18 on Amazon. Some zip ties and some other little things. So total cost for this is right at about $200, or a little bit less, depending on if you've got some of the extra little things, or if you need to buy in bulk. I bought a lot of things in bulk, so mine cost more, but a lot of that extra is going to go towards other projects. I'll walk you through step by step on the build. So let's go and see a few days ago, when it was much colder out here, what we started out with and how we got this structure put together and running. So to start off with, if you're going to build this, you can build a top frame. I've built this out of a 3/4 inch EMT that you can get out of any of your big box stores. So these are EMT. They're 1-inch OD EMT that we've had to modify just a little bit. They're a little bit cheaper than Maker Pipe on Amazon, and so we've got a 3-way that has a pipe going through it, and then the legs and the longer top to create the box that the NFT channels are going to sit on. So I've got one of these at each of the corners, and that gets us started, and then we got to pound the stakes into the ground so that this can sit on top of them. So we're going to get the first corner set up onto its post, and what do you know? You know, it's not often that things work out so well for me. If you've seen my channel, you've seen how things don't usually work out. But in this case, things actually are doing pretty well. So I've got the first 2 front posts are going to sit right there. And actually, I need to move the front posts down a little bit, and I'll show you why. So this is how the NFT is going to drain. It's going to drain from the top of the hill down, and there's going to be a gutter sitting on these hooks, and it's going to come across to a downspout that will go into the reservoir. Well, problem is the gutters that I already had cut as leftovers from the other ones that I'm doing for the rain gutter grow system are cut to 5 feet, and this is 4.5 feet. So there's more than 6 inches here. I need to move these and place them closer to the hooks here, and then I'll need to move those to line them up with where the 4 corners of the structure are going to be once it's all said and done. And there you have it. Okay, so what you're going to need to cut EMT pipe is this little gadget. It is an EMT pipe cutter. They come in different sizes to cut different lengths of EMT pipe. I think this one will go up to like 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. For our connectors, the ones that I got off Amazon need a 10 millimeter for the nut and a hex screw that comes with the set to tighten the bolts, which I have a bit for the hex screw on my drill, so I can use the drill. And then to cut the EMT, a vise or something to hold it in place, or you can have a teenager or a small child that can hold it while you make the cuts. As a warning, this is a little bit on the older side. Some of the newer ones have a sharper blade, and I could probably sharpen this up. It does take a lot of forearm strength, so you could probably use a hacksaw or an angle grinder if you have it to cut EMT, and be a lot quicker and less hassle. But I don't feel like getting my power tools out, so I'll use this, and I'll just take the work out as I can get it. And then once you cut the EMT, I put some electrical tape on the end of the EMT pipe, and that way it gives the connection something to clamp onto other than just galvanized steel. And lastly, I've got a 10-foot garage, so I can do this just barely. I've got maybe 2 or 3 inches of spare space up there. EMT pipe. This is 3/4 inch, available at Lowe's, Home Depot, any of your big box stores. Sold in 10-foot sections or 5-foot sections. You get more bang for your buck if you buy the 10-foot and cut it yourself. All right, so first thing to do is clamp your vise or your clamp or whatever to get your pipe secured as much as you can. This one's still going to have a little bit of room for it because it's not quite designed for clamping on pipes. But if you have a bench vise or something that you can just lock this in, that would be best. Second thing is take your measurement. Now, the great thing about doing this project is that I don't have to be exactly precise with this. So I'm not running electrical conduit for a house and running the electrical system. In that case, I would need to be very precise with my cuts. This is just for the base for an NFT system, and the legs are not even really significantly useful in the fact that the rebar is what's actually going to hold the structure in place. These just slip down over the rebar, so they're really just more of a covering. So I don't have to be super precise with it. And on my side of this, I've got a sticker that I use as kind of a guide. So the hardest part about cutting the conduit is that you have to make sure that you get a circle around on your first pass. It's very easy. If this thing is even the tiniest bit slanted one way or the other, you're not going to get a cut. You're going to make threads, basically, and it's going to spin like it would on a bottle cap, and you're going to end up with this perfectly symmetric thread all the way up the EMT if you keep going. So you want your first cut to cut a circle flat across the EMT conduit, and then once you've made that first pass or two in that circle, in that groove, it creates a trench for the blade to kind of ride down, and then you're fine. Then the rest of it is just brute force and cutting through the pipe. So we want to make sure that our clamp is tightened down, that we're actually cutting into the conduit, and I'm going to cut it this way so that I've got an opening on this side that gets exposed. And so then I can check my blade, and if it looks like it's going to be off, I kind of pull it back to the original cut. Because I've had this thing since the first set of videos 10 years ago, and I'm pretty sure that it's gotten slammed in the toolbox a time or two since then. So I've got my first cut in, and now it's just a matter of tightening this thing to the point that it cuts through the pipe. So let me bring you in. You can see in this channel, coming a little bit closer, I've got a ring set, and it goes all the way around. So then that way, as you go to cut the rest of your pipe, it'll just cut inside that groove. So now the routine for this is fairly simple. You want to cut a little bit, especially on these first passes. You want to take your time, let it kind of go all the way around a couple times. You'll feel the tension start letting up. It'll move a little freer once it's made the cuts, and it's just kind of then running on top of the groove that it's already made. And then you tighten this ever so slightly, and then you keep doing that. And you do that until you get all the way through the pipe. It takes a little longer than you might think at first, but you just keep doing that and hope that your forearms don't give out before it's all said and done. And there you have it. Now, this tool has a little tool you can use to kind of smooth out those inside edges if you're worried about a sharp edge. I'm not for this application because I'm going to put some electrical tape on the end. So we made our cuts. We have 2 long versions, 2 short versions. As you can see, I've covered the end of the pipe with electrical tape to make it easier to go on. And so now we just attach them to the structure. So these are 2 of the shorter ends, and they'll go in the back. So I'll take that, take my 10 millimeter connection, and with these, the 2 bolts are too close for me to get the ratchet side on. So I'll do that. And these should snug up once I get everything. There we go. And then just tighten it up, and it's snug in place. So do that to all 4 pieces. I need to remove the 2 stubs that I had out there for measurement purposes. I'll take those off, put the true front legs on, and we'll get it back out into the garden. All right, got it back outside. So now it's just slipping it on the rebar and making sure we're level. Could use a helper for this, but you know, beggars can't be choosers, right? It's not like I've got 4 kids inside. All right, so we're back. Got a couple of days. Let the cold air kind of work its way out. Got some much nicer temperatures outside now. So let's finish the NFT project by working on the rail system. So we've got a couple of things that you'll need to work on your downspouts. So first off, you're going to need a downspout. This is a 3x4. You use 3x4. You can use 2x3. There's not much cost difference. You could use some fence paneling. You can use actual rain gutter. The more enclosed it is, you want something that's kind of a tube shape. So you could use PVC. The thing I found with PVC is that since it's a round shape, you can't really get things to sit flush in the bottom of it. A lot of people use it though, so you could use that. You just want something that water will run down to an endpoint that you can then drain into your reservoir. So I've chosen 2x3 PVC downspouts. They come in 10-foot sections. They're about $15 each. I'm going to cut it in half. So a 10-foot section in half will give me about a 5-inch downspout NFT run. You could go longer, you can go shorter, just whatever your space will work. And 5 feet seems to work pretty well for me. So I've got the downspout that I'm going to be doing. I find that with PVC, if you're using PVC pipe, you can get a PVC cutter. And those are fairly handy tools. For the downspouts, I found an oscillating tool cuts the best. I tried on my circular saw, and you can get a PVC blade, and I probably should do that if I was going to do a whole lot of cuts. But if you're using a wood blade that has those big, long, thick teeth, the problem you're going to run into is you're going to chip the top of the PVC, and it may not be a bad thing, but you may chip something that you don't want to chip, and then your pipe isn't water. Water won't flow it, or leak, or you don't have a smooth edge to go up flush against something. So I just use this oscillating tool. They're fairly cheap. Most of you probably have them. If you have a circulating saw, you probably have one of these, or you can get one pretty cheap. They're Harbor Freight, have them like $20. You need a speed square, something to mark with, measuring tape. You'll need a blade to take the burrs off once you've made your cuts. And then one of the fun things we'll get to in a second, once we make the cuts, is that we have to bend the PVC on one end, and maybe two. You have to bend the PVC so that the top end isn't open. So you want to flatten it together, close it off so that you don't have anything getting in there, debris-wise, bugs, anything like that. So to do that, I have a butane torch for kitchen use and butane fuel. If you have a heat gun is probably safer, works better. I just use what I got, and I don't see the need to go and buy a $40 heat gun when I've got a $10 butane torch, and these cans of fuel are like 50 cents to $1 each. If you can find an Asian market, you may be able to get them cheaper. That's where I found my butane torches, butane stoves. So put it together like this, and I'll show you that when we get there. So to start, I'm going to measure 5 feet off of one end of the PVC, and then we'll cut it in half, and then I'll show you how to bend the PVC pipe once we've made the cut. I'm going to take my 2 ends, you just scrape the back side of your blade against that corner. It'll take most of that stuff off. Make sure you do inside and outside. All right, I'm going to put my oscillating tool up, and then we'll come back and get these melted into position. And I guess YouTube is probably going to want me to say, if you do this with the butane torch, be very careful. All right, flames, flammable, all that good stuff. So if you're not comfortable working with an open flame, just get a heat gun. It'll be a lot easier for you. So I'll show you how I do it. Where you can substitute the butane torch for a heat gun for your purpose if you have one of those. This process works exactly the same. It's just the heat source is a little different. And I would recommend you do this in an open area, not a nice enclosed little space, because you're going to have fumes from the heat gun. You're also going to have some fumes from the PVC, but I'm in a nice airy garage, and if I need to, I can open up the garage door behind me, but I've not known this to be that big of a deal. So I'm going to start by opening up my butane torch. Get some of the little stuff out of there. I've got my heat glove on. I'm just going to start working it over the PVC pipe until I get to the point that the PVC starts to deform. If you're working with a heat gun, you won't have to worry about the little brown spots on the edge of it. But again, this is not it's not going to be for an aesthetic purpose. It's an NFT channel. So right here, you can see it's starting to deform on the top. And I need to make sure I get those bottom corners. They're almost there. If you don't heat it up thoroughly along all the spaces you need to bend, you're going to know it real quick when you start trying to bend it. All right, so turn off the heat gun, and you've got about 20 seconds to do this once you start. So you see how easy that is to mold? So I push these 3 fingers in, and then this is cool enough that I can work it with my fingers if I'm careful. Don't touch with your bare hand right away. You can burn yourself pretty easily, just like I almost did there. Okay. And that is how you melt and enclose the PVC downspout. So you see, I've got it picked up, and now the water, this section all the way down is sealed. One other thing I'm doing on these is I'm taking the end piece and creating a little bit of a lip. So you just do that by heating this bottom section here just enough. Make sure you do it once you've got the other end bent and you've got it in position, because you don't want to do the top side this way. But taking the bottom piece and heating it up just enough to where you get the end malleable. So like that. And then just hold your fingers in there on your heat resistant glove. And then that will create just enough of a lip so that the water flows down into your catch pipe and not go skimming straight out. And now we get to make frisbees. So we're going to cut out our holes in the NFT channels so that we can plant our plants, and we're going to offset them. So 2 of these pipes are going to have a certain one spacing, and 2 of them are going to have another, so that there's more of a diamond pattern in the hole, so that way you maximize the space you have in the NFT channels. So I'll show you that in just a second. All right, so we have our pipes all drilled. I measured 6 inches on center from about 2 or 3 inches from the end of the pipe where the inlet is going to go in all the way down. There's probably too many holes. That's what she said, right? But probably too many holes for the garden tube. But you can just plant every other one. If you're doing, bigger crops like herbs, you can just plant every other one so they have more room to run. If you want to do lettuces, you can do every hole. For some of your smaller lettuces, but like iceberg may need a little bit more room for the head to develop. So I use 2-inch or 51 millimeter hole saw. You can get these in a kit, and the saw size can be whatever you want that you can that you have on hand. If you got a 2.5, you have a 1 3/4, it's whatever. Probably want more than an inch and a half, so that the plants have room to grow out of the hole in the pipe. And then I drilled a 5/8 inch hole so that I have a 1/4 inch length of irrigation tubing, and that will connect to the pump. All right, so we fast forward in time a little bit, and I have my helper here, Abram, who has helped me with some of the bends on this pipe. So this is the pipe that our gutters are going to drain into. So I've got holes cut for each of the downspouts that will have the NFT channels and the plants in them, which will run into these grooves, into this pipe. It's sealed on one end. I've got a couple of holes so that I can brace it to the fence panel, and then I've got the downspout pushed down so that the pipe will drain into the downspout connector. So the NFT channels are going to run into this. They're going to drain down. They're going to drain into this, and then this will drain into the reservoir. For the reservoir, I'm using a 27-gallon tote. You can get these from any of your big stores, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. Get whatever color lid you want, so you can match what your theme is. Other things you're going to need for this. I've got 1/2 inch. This is drip irrigation tubing without the drips. Make sure you don't get the ones that already have the holes punched in. That would be a bad thing. I've got 1/4 inch irrigation tubing. I've got connectors that will connect from the 1/2 inch to the 1/4 inch with a 1/4 inch barb. I've got the 1/2 inch shutoffs that will go on this tubing so that you can turn the system on and off, and I'll also install a pump drain outflow that has a cutoff as well. You need something to cut the pipe with. Pruning shears work pretty well for this. And the one thing you'll need is a pump. Now you can get a pond pump, get these at Lowe's, but the ones at Lowe's are really expensive. This one's online. It's a VivoSun 800-gallon, 24-watt submersible pump. I got it on sale on Amazon. It's only $18. Normally like $20, $25. The ones, like I said, Lowe's are like $50, $60. It has different adapters. I've got the 1/2 inch barb on so that it will connect directly to this. So this is going to sit in the reservoir, pump water to the end of the channels. The channels run down, down, and down, back into the reservoir, and then the cycle repeats all over again. And that's the build. You can go back to the beginning of the video and see the finished product. I've had the NFT running for a few days now, and the plants have been in it for a couple of days, and despite a little bit of transplant shock, they're doing great. So I'll bring you a video in the future of an update once we're past that transplant shock point, and you can see just how everything's running and how the plants are growing. But until then, this is Dewey with Flip Flop Gardening, reminding you that you plant the seed, but God sends the harvest. Be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.